Are you starting to run out of ideas? Don't worry, we've got plenty. If you're ready to dive in and figure out how to survive an extended stay at home on lockdown during a social distancing period or a big snowstorm, just some simple things that are going to help you in your day-to-day. So if you were excited about this, go ahead and hit the like button. Go ahead and subscribe to our channel because we're going to have so many new things come out in the next coming weeks, and we want to make sure that you stay up to date. Let's get started. Oh no, there's monsters. Let's go. This will work for kids that range from usually about 2 to 3 years old all the way up to about 7, 8 years old. So if you're in that category and you have kids that age, this is perfect for you. If not, go ahead and hop off and you can check on a couple different things. Number 1 on the survival guide is to know your child. And I know that sounds really weird because how do you not know your child? But a lot of times parents don't think about how long their child stays occupied by one activity or another. So if your child is really into reading or really into arts and crafts, like my daughter is really excited about art and painting, and that's just really not my thing. I'm not very crafty. So for me, it might take 10 minutes and then I'm kind of not interested anymore. But for her, she can sit and draw and paint for a whole hour, and that's a long time for a preschooler. So keep in mind what your child really likes and what they will be entertained by, but not for very long. And you need to kind of just make a mental note of how long those activities usually last. Another big piece of this when you're thinking about knowing your child is figuring out what are they struggling with? What are they having a hard time with at school? Depending on when you're watching this, think about back to the last time you went to a parent-teacher conference and you learned, and if you're a stay-at-home mom already, and if you're a homeschool family, you're already going to have a better handle of this, but really kind of take yourself back there and figure out what was it that my child was still working on, still struggling with. Figure out how you can make that fun for them, because if you can make it fun and make it a game, then they're going to be a lot more likely to want to practice that. Another thing you really need to ask yourself about your child is, what is their currency? And I don't mean money. I mean, what is really, really fun and important to them, something that you can use when they're starting to have a breakdown. For instance, kids sometimes struggle when it's time for cleaning up. So a good tool for your tool belt is to figure out what their currency is. So my daughter's currency is painting, and we paint a lot already, but we don't get to paint in certain areas of the house, and she really likes it when I set that up because it's very time consuming. So it's something she doesn't get all the time. So that is one of her currencies that I use to kind of keep her from having a meltdown. Survival tip number 2 is to follow the curve. And what I mean by the curve is you're gonna have a lot of different things going on in your day. I'm going to talk about your morning and afternoon because that's when your kids are going to be the craziest. So when I talk about the curve, there are really 2 curves in a day. You're going to have your morning curve, and at the bottom of the curve, you're going to have kind of low sound, low music, not a lot of activity going on, not a lot of movement. So that's usually when they wake up. It takes them a second to get going usually, unless you have a wild child like mine. It wakes up and is ready to go. But usually you start at the bottom of the curve. As the day goes on and progresses, you're gonna have your breakfast, you're gonna get cleaned up, you're gonna have some sort of activity. Usually it's a little bit lower level activity. So maybe you're getting out the Legos, or you're getting out the Play-Doh or Lincoln Logs or something like that. And as you get to the top, that's where you have a lot more activity, a lot more light, a lot more sound. So maybe you're going outside, and maybe you're having them do their exercise, or you're having them just do outdoor planting with you, or something that is high intensity, high sound, and very stimulating. And then as you get a little bit further on in your morning session, or your morning curve, you're going to start kind of slowing things down a little bit. So if you've ever seen a preschool day in a traditional preschool setting, they always will do this. They'll have the big morning curve, and then they'll kind of start slowing it down, and then everybody washes their hands, grabs their lunchbox, sits down, has lunch. And that slows it down, and then they usually have downtime or nap time right at that point in time, because that is the low moment. So you want low sound, low activity, low movement at that point in time. And if these kids don't get that downtime, even if your child doesn't take a nap, if they don't get a little bit of downtime and quiet time, they don't have that opportunity to reset. And I know a lot of us as adults, we get in a habit of rushing and rushing and rushing, and we don't ever stop. And a lot of us are even working through our lunches now, and that's not something that you want your child to get used to doing. I mean, they're not an adult. They're not a workaholic right now. They're a child, and they definitely need that time and space to just re-energize themselves and fill their cup back up and reset their batteries for the afternoon, because the last thing you want to do is have a child that is very overstimulated or very understimulated. So have you ever noticed how your children are really super cranky if they're just laying around all day long? You're like, why are they so crappy? They've been doing nothing but rest all day. Well, they're not stimulated enough. But then you have the children that you've taken to a theme park all day long, and by 2, 3, 4 o'clock, you've wanted to get the most out of your money. So you're sending that kid on every single activity that they can do, and then they are just stressed out and they're exhausted, and then they want to go home. They don't want to do anything else because they didn't get any time to reset their battery. So it's a really, really important thing to know when you're building a schedule for your day, is to kind of know what that curve looks like. So just make sure that you have a morning curve, downtime, and then an afternoon, evening curve, and then downtime is going to be your bedtime, hopefully by then. And survival tip number 3 is to create a flexible, loose schedule and lean into the things that work and pull away from the things that don't. Well, tip number 4 is prepare. It is definitely okay to take a morning out, or an afternoon, or an evening, or if you're like me, a night person. So when my daughter goes to bed, that's usually when I get everything done. But take kind of an inventory of what you have, what you don't have. It is okay to come up with things that you have laying around the house and have your children help you make up games to that. So we found cups the other day, and you're going to see this video come out soon. But we found just some random cups that I was supposed to use for her birthday party. And we made all kinds of games out of them. And the good thing about that is that she learned to be resourceful, use what you have. That's a very important skill. It's insane how often we don't do a project or an activity because we don't have the thing, or the markers, or the correct paint, or anything like that. So you don't always have to have the exact thing that you saw on Pinterest or the exact same thing that your friend has. If you can ask your children, what can we use instead? That's a term that I like to use all the time. What can we use instead? Or make sure we use what we have. And that'll help you, one, save a whole bunch of money and save a whole bunch of time. It's a really good time for you to kind of go through your house, and there are going to be a whole bunch of games, unless you're like me and you barely have anything in your house because it's only 670 square feet. So we can't really store a lot of stuff, but most people have that closet that ends up with everything. Or they have under their kids' beds, or things that they've gotten for Christmas that they've never even opened because it has a lot of pieces and stuff like that. But take a quick look around and have your kids help you with this. Say, hey, go grab all the board games from your room, or hey, find anything that has to do with Play-Doh and let's all put it in one spot in the house. Go ahead and take a look around at what you have, because that'll help you plan and make your schedule that we talked about in step number 3. So make sure that you are being mindful of what you have before you start putting things on your schedule. If you hardly have anything at your house, and that's okay, your kid is still going to be entertained by rocks, bugs, sticks, anything that they find in the yard, chunks of grass. There's millions of things that they can do with just the stuff that they find outside. My daughter made me an entire garden the other day out of the little purple weeds. They're about this tall, and dandelions. I don't know what those purple flowers are called, but she literally built me an entire garden. I just had a big, huge container that I hadn't planted anything in yet, but it still had dirt in there from last season. And she just poked a hole, planted it in there, covered it back up, watered them. And it was the cutest thing ever, but it had her entertained for like an hour. But did I have to buy anything for that? No, it was just stuff that we found around the house. It wasn't even my idea. She asked me, Mommy, can I plant some flowers? Sure, go find some. Easy. Another thing that you should do while you're preparing is make sure that you have put away anything that is important to you or breakable, because when kids are home for an extended period of time and they don't have a schedule to work with, this is why survival tip number 3 is very important. But if they don't have things to do, they will come up with things to do. And usually those things are not what you want them to be doing. So be aware that, especially if you're new to this and you've not been home for an extended period of time with little kids running around, they're going to come up with their own games to play if you don't engage them in something. So especially if you're trying to work from home, and trust me, I get that. I have definitely been that mom that is working on something and doesn't realize that, you know, an hour has gone by and my child's sitting right next to me, and then I realized that she hands me an entire handful of hair, and she was playing really well sitting right next to me, and she still came up with her own thing to do. Her hair was in her face and she said, "This is in my way," and just started cutting at it. Now I was still sitting right next to her, but it still happened. But anyway, so just be aware that it is very possible that at this point in time, if you're home and your kids are all home, they're gonna, most likely this is when something is gonna break. So start putting that stuff away now. Really, my favorite rule of thumb with that is if you love it, put it away. Survival tip number 5 is to establish simple expectations for every single day. So one of my favorites is in the morning, especially now if you have a little bit more time to spend at home in the mornings. A lot of us usually are rushing in the mornings, but if you find yourself with a little extra time, a really good habit to get into is to have the kids actually make their beds every day. I feel like a lot of our culture hasn't been doing that anymore, and I'm guilty of that myself. I've gotten to where I just get up and want to get everything done and get everything ready, and I kind of pick my cup of coffee over making my bed, and I've noticed that when I get home, it makes me feel like overwhelmed and stressed out when I walk into my bedroom to go back to sleep, because then I have to rearrange everything. So something that we've started doing is every morning we make our beds, and I say, "Hey Stella, I'm gonna make my bed and you're gonna make your bed, and then we're gonna get together and we're gonna have breakfast." And we make it fun and we make it exciting. And some days we get up and we say, "Okay, today we're gonna make our beds together." It's the same skill, the same habit, the same expectation, but we're just making it a little bit different every day. Sometimes she wants to do it together. Sometimes she wants to be proud of herself and do it on her own. And sometimes I'll say, "Hey, Stella, do you want to make my bed and I'll make your bed?" And she is so excited about that. Oops, I just dropped something. One, need to know your children and know what's going to work for them. I'm going to pick this up. Another good one, especially right now, especially during flu season, cold season, anything like that, and just as everyday hygiene, is before you move on to any activity or any new activity, we have to clean up and move on. We have to clean up before we move on. So I always have any group of children, they have to clean up whatever they have going on. So if they have all the Play-Doh out, they have to clean it all up, put it all away, and then they have to wash their hands. So clean up is kind of twofold. Clean up what you're doing and then clean up yourself. And then we can move on. But make sure that they understand that you expect that they're going to clean up, wash their hands, and then move on to the next thing. Kids really only need to know what's happening right now, what we're doing right now, what I expect from you right now, and what we're doing next, and what the transition is. So if their transition is always the same, clean up your station, wash your hands, and then we move on, then they don't have to remember what the transition is. They already know what that is. And if it's the same for every single thing, then your life is going to be so much easier, because they're going to automatically, when they start getting bored with something, or they're ready to move on, they're going to start cleaning up on their own. And that's going to be a really nice cue for you to know that, okay, we're about to start moving on to something else. Use resourcefulness. And a lot of kids don't really even understand this concept right now, and a lot of adults honestly don't either. We tend to just use and use and use and use, and we don't really ever think about the fact that what if we can't go just buy that again? So right now would be a really good time to start working with kids on that. Because so many of us will just say, oh, well, we need that one thing from the store, and I'm going to pack everyone up in the car, and we're going to go get that one thing from the store. And what that really does is that, one, it just stresses you out, because you go to the store to buy one thing to spend $5, and you end up going, oh, well, while I'm already here, I'm going to get this and this and this, this and this. And this is probably a bunch of stuff that you didn't even really need to survive or get through your day. But since you're there, you're just gonna go ahead and spend your money. And a lot of people have that mindset. And I personally don't think it's a good thing to pass along to little kids that, hey, whenever I want something, I'm just gonna go and drive 20 miles or 20 minutes or whatever it is. Maybe you live in a smaller or in a closer town and you don't have to go that far. But a lot of us do that, and I'm not saying that I don't do it and I haven't done it, because I definitely have. But I catch myself doing it more and more, and then I realize, you know what? I really didn't need that. We could have found something else to do, and I would have saved that time. I would have saved that money. I would have saved that wear and tear on my vehicle, and I would have been able to do something way more exciting and fun with my kid, or just have some free space to do whatever she wanted to do. But instead we went all the way to the store to get something, and then by the time you get back home, it's been an hour or an hour and a half, depending on what you ended up doing, and then sometimes they get hungry by then, and so then what you do is you end up going to McDonald's on the way home. And were you gonna feed your kid French fries to begin with? Probably not. You're probably gonna fix some apple slices and oatmeal or something like that, something way better for them. But since they were starving and they were cranky, you went ahead and fed them McDonald's. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, and we're all gonna do that from time to time. But what I'm saying is that if you start teaching your kids to use what they have and be resourceful and figure out how to use things in more than one way. For instance, actually, my daughter's teacher gave her this idea, and shout out to Rebecca. Miss Rebecca is amazing. But what she did was, she said, you know what, if you don't have an easel, you can take saran wrap, and if you have posts in your house and you have paint, wrap the posts from one post to the other, so it's wrapped around, and that makes a huge easel. And we did it the other day, and it was awesome. But it was stuff that I already had at home, and honestly, it was so much more fun and exciting. And when Stella walked out there, she was like, oh my gosh. But it's just being resourceful, being able to find ways to use one thing more than one way. It's really going to teach your kids that just because the label on the box says that this is saran wrap doesn't mean that it can't also be something else. And honestly, it's a good skill to know, because if everything starts to crash and burn, you're going to need to be resourceful, and you're going to need to just use what you have. And anyway, I know I'm rambling about that, but that is, I guess, one of the things that I really, really care about. All right, survival tip number 7 is going to really stress some of you out, because some of you are like me, and you think when you have an extended period of time at home that you're going to get all kinds of things done and everything's going to be perfect and magical. And that's just not the case. So tip number 7 is to avoid having too many projects. Having too many projects would be like thinking that you're going to get all the laundry done today, and all the dishes, and you're going to clean out your car, and you're going to go through all of the socks in your entire house, and you're going to match every single one, and you're going to clean out that closet that you've never really cleaned out and still has all these boxes in it, and you're going to clean your garage. And trust me, I used to do this. I used to do this kind of stuff all the time. And before I had a child, I actually would get all that stuff done. And it's just not realistic anymore, especially when you're trying to work from home and you have a child at home or children at home. It's even harder then. So just avoid putting too many projects on your plate, because that is just going to make you ridiculously upset. It's going to make you feel like you're failing, and you're not. You're not failing at all. Especially if you're in this exact same time with me, in March of 2020, we're all just trying to figure life out right now, and it is all completely screwed up and different. And especially for me. I'm used to teaching to a classroom full of children, and now I'm looking at a screen teaching, and it's super weird. And I'm used to talking to children all day long, and I'm speaking to adults now. So it's a very weird world right now. And so all we're really trying to do is survive it. That's why we came up with all these survival tips. But so try to limit yourself to maybe one big project. And depending on the size of it, maybe just find one thing that you want to get accomplished that day. And if you get that checked off the list, you're going to feel so good. You're going to say, yes, I actually survived today and I got all the dishes done. And I know that sounds really dumb for some of us because some of us are really good at keeping up dishes, but I'm just not. Or maybe you just really want to get your car cleaned out because it's just sitting there and it's not going anywhere. So you may as well clean it out. Or you want to get that one closet cleaned out and sorted out. So that could be part of the stuff that you put in your schedule is, okay, during this time, we're going to do mommy's project and you're going to have the kids help you with that. And especially sorting and things like that. My daughter helped me sort all of our socks the other day, and it was the funniest thing because then she got to play with all the socks that were done as long as she didn't take them apart. So that was her reward at the end, is that she just really wanted to play and make a volcano with the socks. So just try not to put too much on your plate because it will just stress you out. Survival tip number 8 is to follow the 10-5-2 rule. Is anytime we're getting ready to transition from one thing to the next, is I always tell her we have 10 minutes and then we're going to clean up and move on. And then she usually acknowledges, okay, great, we have 10 minutes before we're going to move on. That gives her her first kind of cue that, okay, something is about to change. I'm about to start winding this down and winding up something else. And then about 5 minutes later, she's probably going to forget. Especially if she's doing Legos or something like that, she's not going to remember that I even said we had 10 minutes left. So then I let her know again. Hey, Stella, we only have 5 minutes left, and then we're going to clean up, and then we're going to move on to something else. And usually, sometimes I'll tell her what we're moving on to. I'll say, okay, we've got 2 minutes, so we're going to clean up and move on to something else, or move on to painting, or move on to snack time, or move on to lunch. So when you give them those 3 specific reminders that they're about to move on, you're going to have so much less resistance when you go to move on from a project, especially if it's something that they really like. But it's time to get their, lunch in before they take a nap or start having some downtime. So if they are already know that this is coming, something's changing, you're going to have so much less resistance. Because I'm sure you've all been in a situation where you've had your child watching a movie or watching TV or something while you're trying to fix dinner or get something done, and you just walk over to it and turn it off, and they freak out. Because kids do not like change. They do not like to feel like something has just changed and they don't know what happened. So make sure that you give them those 10, 5, and 2 rule. If you use that, it will make your life so much easier. Just trust me. Survival tip number 9 is to make sure that in your schedule that you build a section that I call playtime, work time. And it's really not playtime for your kids. I mean, it is, they are usually playing, but I usually say it's something where you're gonna do your work and I'm gonna do my work. And we'll work together, and then when we're done, we're gonna move on to something really fun. So I try to put this time where I need to get some work done. I try to make that some sort of quiet activity or something that she can do on her own. And the last one is to use your community. Right now, your community, especially your online community, is gonna be more valuable to you than really anything else that you have, because we have unlimited access to so many different things, and there's so much that you can learn from other people. There are so many brilliant people that have created content for you and are just working tirelessly to put it online so that you have access to very good quality information. So make sure that you use the network that you have, use the skills that you have, and start teaching those things. And then I try to put it immediately before something very exciting that she really wants to do. So that will help your child practice some patience, because if you need a good solid 30 minutes or 25 minutes to get something done, like like for instance, when I'm filming these videos, this is part of my work time. So I usually will have Stella work on something else while I'm doing my work time, and she has to be very quiet and she has to be patient. And as soon as we're done, we're actually going to go ride bikes. So that's one of her occurrences, is getting to ride her bike. So I use that when I really need to get something done. I make sure that I plan that immediately after, because otherwise, if I do it before, I don't have any currency to use to just remind her, hey, remember, we talked about this. If we're patient for just a couple more minutes, then we're going to get to go play outside. But if you keep interrupting mommy, then we're not going to get to go do that. So that's a really good thing to just give them something to look forward to, because a lot of kids have a hard time with patience, and a lot of adults have struggled with this too, because we can get everything now. And so if we start working with our kids on this now and start building their patience, they're going to start asking you. And now Stella will come up to me and say, Mommy, when we're done, can we go ride bikes? And I'll say, yeah, of course, honey. That's what we planned on doing. And she's like, okay, how much longer? Maybe 10 minutes? Okay, so in 10 more minutes, we can ride bikes? Yeah. So now she knows that we're getting ready to do something great that she really wants to do, but she has to be patient or she's not going to be able to get that. So she has really started...